Hi everyone, welcome to Managing in the Middle. I'm Rajita and Vishal, your host for this podcast, Managing in the Middle. We talk about what it takes to be a people manager in this day and age of constant change and challenge. We share our stories and learnings from our own people management experience. And we also have guests who are experts in their own right, who come and talk to us about their views on people management. So if you tuned in into last few of our episodes or you're joining us for the first time, welcome and thank you for being part of this journey.
In our very first episode, we asked each other a fun question. If your manager were an app on your phone, what's the one evergreen feature you would add to make your life easier? And what bug would you want to fix immediately? That was our not so covert attempt at foreshadowing today's episode, where we're diving headfirst into a topic that's been on everyone's mind, a force that's reshaping our workforce, the roles that we play, and the very definition of what it means to lead and manage AI, and more AI. For managers, this is obviously not some far off futuristic concept. AI is right here, right now, changing everything from how we hire to how we measure performance to how we foster psychological safety and a healthy team culture. It's a powerful tool, but it also brings with it a set of challenges and questions. How do we lead a team where some of our work is done by AI? How do we upskill our people to work with AI, not against it? And how do we ensure that this technology serves our human goals and not the other way around? This episode is all about helping you as managers move beyond the hype and fear that surrounds this topic and into a more practical space that is ingrained with human-centered leadership. We'll explore how AI can be a strategic thought partner, a member of your team, if you may, and not a replacement, and how your unique human skills, your empathy, your judgment, your ability to build trust are more valuable than ever before. So let's get into it.
Okay, so to bring this episode to life, I'm joined by a friend, a former colleague, and a truly exceptional leader, Stephanie Conway. Stephanie is a seasoned talent executive with over 2 decades of experience at giants like Google and LinkedIn. Having reported to her myself, I've seen her magic firsthand. She's one of those rare leaders who truly nurtures her people by getting to know them as individuals. And today, she's the head of LinkedIn's Global Talent Development Partner team, where she's architecting a skills-based infrastructure for employees worldwide. That blend of deep human empathy and vast organizational experience makes her uniquely suited to help us navigate the complexities of people management in an AI-driven world. Exactly what we are discussing today. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Rajita, and thank you, Vijay. And so thank you so much for the kind words. I'm really blushing here. I look forward to the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
so excited. And, every episode, Stephanie, we talk about how long will it take for us to say the words AI. Vishal, this time it just took 21 seconds because the episode is about AI and management. So
Absolutely.
take it on, take it forward.
We also spoke about potentially introducing a short game, Stephanie, for every time we say AI. Maybe we should have done that on this
Oh,
podcast.
No,
But
not
just
this
it
one.
just got it's conscious for the fact that you're at work.
well, you know me well enough, though. Maybe after this, when we see each other the next time, I'm always up for a game like this.
Absolutely.
No,
Absolutely.
absolutely. All right. Just getting into it, Stephanie. So there's a lot of noise out there about AI. No surprises on that front. And it's easy for managers and organizations to obviously get caught up in this speculation. So we thought it's only fitting that we address the elephant in the room and debunk some myths right off the bat. So, leaning into the first one, AI will make all managers obsolete or replace them. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that's going to happen. As in most companies, I'd say, in our line of work, we all talk about like, okay, there's AI and AI can help with the kind of repetitive tasks and so on. But there's what makes it even more important is the human aspect. So, within LinkedIn, we talk about human plus. And our whole kind of strategy is obviously we want our employees to embrace AI and we want them to really kind of see how can their job be optimized through AI. But at the same time, it should free them up to really be human, because that is something that, AI at this point cannot do yet. So I do not think that managers are going away. But the opposite is the fact. Actually, I think we need to rethink and amplify the role of the manager. And one thing that, for example, we work a lot with Josh Burson, and he has kind of created a research or like a philosophy around the super manager. Now that we're in the era of AI, I personally don't like that term, to be honest, because it's like, to me, it's this concept of doing more with less, and we just all need to be superhumans. And I don't actually think that's what it is. It's more like it's changing the role of the manager to become more of an enabler rather than a manager of tasks or a manager of processes.
Yeah. I like the term super manager, but it seems like it doesn't tell you what it means. Like, is it like being a superhuman? Is it being super? I don't know. And I think while I like the term, and you said you don't like the term, Stephanie, so I want to know what about it that you dislike. But there seems to be a connotation in that it is beyond what a manager needs to do. And that's why it's probably impossible, maybe, like Superman.
Yeah, it's kind of like an impossible task. And I think the reason why I personally like Superman, but when I think about like what I see in the day-to-day of most companies, and I think tech in particular, is the managers are the ones who are kind of squeezed from both ends. And there's so much responsibility on their shoulders. And when I think about like the terminology super manager, it just means they need to do even more. And that's probably why I do not like the terminology. It's like the impossible task. And I personally think, and I know, Vishal, you want to talk about more myths, but for me, it's, and I can speak to that later, it's we need to rethink not only the role of the manager, but also our strategic org design around what managers do and how much time is associated to what work. So it's a real job redefinition, in my opinion.
No, I had the same reaction as you, Stephanie. I was like, super manager is not a term I want to get behind, because I'm like, it's hard enough to be a good manager, let alone a super manager. So yeah, I think the expectation piece is something that, yeah, I'm like, can we be a little more realistic about it?
Yeah. Just one more thing on that, right? I was reading this article where it said that when when management as a concept started arriving in the workplace, like, a person who is intelligent, hardworking, is brought in to build efficiencies in the system. They felt that a manager is not like a genius or a hero, and that reserved only for some people who were leaders. So that's how they made the distinction between what is a leader versus what is a manager, right? And to me, somehow the word super manager is asking for the same things that a manager does, but a little bit more. So I think if the meaning is clear, maybe it'll become easier for us to understand what does that mean. Like I said, there's a Superman and super manager. So I like the term, but maybe we need more clarity on what that actually means.
And I think, to kind of go back to the myth that you had mentioned, Vishal, it is about the role of a manager is not going away with AI. It is actually getting bigger and more important. And I think that's where the super manager does fit. Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I think another myth associated with, the role of the manager, Stephanie, is also this notion that AI is only being implemented top down. So, I mean, again, because maybe there is this thought that managers don't necessarily, or leaders don't necessarily have the agency to introduce AI into the mix. So it is, I don't know, someone in the big bad corporate world that is kind of overseeing, implementation, almost like the Wizard of Oz, if I was to kind of draw that parallel. So what are your thoughts on that aspect?
I actually think that is just not realistic, because when you think about it, everyone can access AI in some shape or form, and they're using it. So it's, waiting until at the top, they have decided, oh, this is how we use AI, is probably no longer realistic. I think there's two parts to it. At the top-down level, I think from a company perspective, there is a necessity to define the guardrails around using AI. What are the ethics? How do we do it in the right way? And honestly, which tools are compliant with the company policies? So that one needs to come top down. But then when it comes to the application, I think that is something where we want employees to just play around with the technology so that the fear goes away. And that needs to come bottom up, in my opinion. And the innovation will very rarely come top down. That needs to come bottom up. And I think, it would be wrong to stop that because the movement is out there. People are using it. And if you want to kind of create, we internally call it AI fluency. So if you want to create AI fluency, that is not something that can be prescribed from the top. That needs to be something that people want to lean into.
That's true. And that resonates with me. And I think it's no different than any other technology, although, I know the general sense is that AI is obviously helping humanity take multiple leaps forward. I mean, you need to put guardrails or guidelines in place, but also give people the agency to kind of use it in any way that they deem appropriate. So that sounds right. Just about right. Raji, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole question out there actually before we
Go for it.
get to the others you may be talking about, Vishal. And maybe we can come to that a little later, Stephanie. My question is that if it's not top down and it is at every level that people need to adapt to AI and also help integrate it into our work lives, then what is the role of a manager in dealing with the fears that people have today? And how does a manager help with that mindset shift? Like, how do you move from fearing AI or having the fear of existence, literally,
Yeah.
right? Like the AI will take my job, to saying, how do I coexist with AI? How do I make AI work for me as well?
Oh, I can actually, if it's okay to go with that question, I can
Yeah,
give
yeah,
you
we
two
should.
examples because I
Sure.
always find the theory is the theory, but let's talk about what we're actually seeing in our day to day.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, when AI became a thing, at least in corporations, I had a conversation with my own team, like talent development partners who a big part of their job is designing. And obviously AI is like a huge helper in designing now. So the question was, we had like a conversation around AI and what it means for our jobs, and is there any fear that any one of us is holding? And the team was very honestly saying, like, what does this mean for my job? And will my job change? And will I still have a job in the future? And what I did then, I said, look, think about it like there's certain parts of your job, like designing, for example, that can be supported with AI. What does that free you up to do that you always wanted to do in your job but didn't have time to do? So we then kind of started having that conversation and really brainstorming on, oh, what's the stuff that we don't get to do because we don't have enough time, but we think it has high value. And that really changed the energy in the conversation and in the room, from like, oh, something's been done to us, to, oh, actually, we can take control of this and really kind of move it forward and do other stuff that we currently can't do. So, and this is not done with one conversation. So this is a conversation I'm having again and again with the team as they learn more about AI and start to apply it. So that's one example. The other example is with my executive assistant, because a lot of the kind of tasks that are more administrative, they're obviously being taken over by AI, or AI really helps. And she and I had a conversation around like what I now really need is more like a chief of staff, someone who can work more strategically. And that's really exciting to her too, because she's like, that's amazing, because that's where I want my job to go. So we are, rather than her kind of thinking about, oh, my job's going away, she's more excited about like, great, this gives me opportunity to lean into something new that I want to learn. I can't do it right now, but over time I will get there. So those are two examples of how It's the rethinking of your job, and rather than the company doing that on your behalf, I think the eliminating the fears is by empowering the employees to think about it themselves. So help them to take control or feel empowered to shape the future.
Yeah, I also think there's a certain amount of not democracy, which what is the right word, but there's an equal opportunity with AI, right? Everyone has equal access to all the tools, and you're telling people that okay, you have access to everything that everybody else has access to. How can you use it to make it easier for yourself? It's not as if only managers have access to AI and the teams don't. In fact, uh, there's another article I was reading from the World Economic Forum which said that people, like team members, are more comfortable going to an AI tool and asking for help when it comes to, say, information. They have more unbiased access to information rather than going to their manager. Or people would like to go to a robot or an AI tool for confidential questions, right? Like, they're struggling with something and they want an answer because there is no fear of scrutiny there, which might happen with a manager. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but I think there is a comfort that people have for some tasks and some areas using AI. But but that doesn't take away from the fact of the point that we were making in the beginning, that a manager's role is not going to go away. It's going to evolve.
Yeah.
It's going to change from more hard skills to more soft skills, right? So, yeah.
I actually think the example you were giving there, Rajita, is I view this as a stepping stone to building capabilities to have the human conversation. Because I think,
Yes.
Yes, it is easier to talk to an AI agent about, or an AI coach about, like, what you don't dare to say to your manager, or but that doesn't take away the fact that I think we all need to build the capability to have honest conversation with a human being. But what I think AI can help us is the practice. So,
Absolutely.
one thing, for example, and another practical example, something that we do internally in LinkedIn is we have the AI role play in LinkedIn Learning, and we use that internally to help employees and managers to prepare for the performance conversation when it comes to the performance cycle reviews. Because if they anticipate they have to have a difficult conversation, they can test it out first and practice and get feedback before they actually have the conversation with the individual. And I think
Yeah.
for that, it is really helpful.
Yeah. So again, it is making AI an ally rather than, uh, a competition that will probably replace
Yeah.
it at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and I think fundamentally it kind of just goes back to the point that, I mean, the use of AI is not a complete replacement of what humans kind of bring to the table, right? And I do feel like a lot of the initial fear around it, or even maybe just the dialogue and the discourse has been around AI is replacing tasks that humans can do. And it possibly is, and rightly so in certain places. But I think in the context of the manager, again, it's that differentiation between task management versus people management. And,
Yeah.
AI is actually replacing task management, but not necessarily that human connection that some of us expect, our
Yeah.
managers to build across the
Yeah.
board. And which is where I kind of feel like somewhere, the fears that we've been discussing as well, is largely based on that complete replacement notion or idea. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, what? One thing that that I read in one of the articles on it that I really liked is that, in the past, managers were managing people and enabling technology. And where we are now is that managers are enabling people and managing
People.
technology. And that I find
Yeah.
this shift is so exciting to me, at least, because it is about what excites me about the role of a people manager is that you enable people. And Rajita, you had kind of said that at the beginning, one of my default is has always been. I like to get to know the person first, like to
Absolutely.
understand where they're coming from, how I can enable them to be, the best version of themselves. And I think that is really coming into the role of the manager now more officially, while, the technology is doing the tasks that, are needed.
Oh, absolutely. I love that framing, Stephanie.
Totally. And maybe that is the framing that needs to define or shape what super manager looks like, right? Like,
Yeah.
it is enabling people using technology rather than
Yeah.
the reverse. So
Yeah.
yeah. I know you
All
had other
right.
myths as well, Vishal. Come on.
Maybe just one last myth before we kind of get into a few questions that we have. And I think this somewhere is kind of an extension of, the replacement idea. One of the other fears that I know a lot of people often talk about is this notion that AI is potentially going to make work feel a lot more impersonal, or, bring about some sort of, I guess, a cold working environment, for lack of a better term. I mean, I have my own personal thoughts about that, but yeah, Stephanie, would love your inputs here too.
I think it's my response to this is it is possible if we let it, but I think it's up to us to not let it become impersonal. And what I mean by that is for example, I don't know if you've ever kind of used AI to help you write something. There's a certain style that it usually has, and that's not always kind of how you would talk. So when I do use AI to help me with my communication, also with my team. And I teach it to kind of be more like sound like me and kind of not be so impersonal.
Yeah.
So that's one way. I think we have a very important role to play to, I think the skill behind it is critical thinking, to not just accept everything firsthand, but actually, make the technology work for you and not the other way around. And in the same way, the impersonal is if we don't intentionally use the time that is being freed up by tasks that AI is taking over to fill it with our humanness, with the personal touch, with kind of really kind of spending the time engaging with a person or with the team, doing the tasks that you didn't have time to do. So if we fill it intentionally, it will not become impersonal. If we don't, yes, there might be a risk. But I think this is up to us. I think this is a real opportunity for humanity to kind of come, and again, this is like a more philosophical point that I probably make. It's like when, for example, if I talk about me, when I stop and don't kind of continue going in a hamster wheel, I have an opportunity to connect with myself. And if I really connect with myself, I can also connect with others. And I think that is the opportunity that AI gives us, that we kind of have more time to connect with us and by virtue of that, connect with others and really be human with each other. So it's moving from doing to being. And that to me is the personal touch, the human touch that we are being gifted with the advancement in technology.
So interesting, because I was just thinking that maybe people suddenly don't know what to do with this extra time that they have. And the role of a manager then that, comes in there. And typically when you talk of, mindfulness programs, uh, when people embark upon a spiritual journey, this is what they see. Like, how do you move from just doing to being, where you sit back and reflect and think about what else, what is my purpose? I mean, in a spiritual journey, but I think in the corporate environment, a manager's role can be to help people understand, okay, fine. So if this part of your job is being taken up by something else, what else can you actually do?
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about a little bit more about how can managers evolve and what management approaches should they take to thrive in this environment or to make their teams thrive as well. But I was just based on what you said from the, I love the doing to being idea.
Yeah. It's and obviously we're here to talk about kind of the manager role in a corporation. So I'm very clear that if you talk about kind of, if I were to talk about with our executive team about like, oh, we need to move from doing to being, I think they'd be like,
They're going to be like,
excuse me, we have a business to run. So obviously we need to take this in context of what does that mean in the corporate environment. And
Yes.
for example, and this kind of maybe answers a part of your question of, so what is the role of the manager now and how does it look like in the day to day? I think the role of the manager is to help create space for the team to experiment, to be creative, to think
Yeah.
about like, okay, with the time that we have now, what could we use this for? And to create a safe space for also failing. Try something out. If it doesn't work, okay, fine, we've learned something.
Yeah.
Try something new. And that is a very different way of working in the corporate environment. And even, in our line of work, so what I'm seeing in our company is it is something that intellectually we all want to get to and understand and are excited about. In the practical, the company culture is so fast moving that it is kind of harder for all of us to feel comfortable with this way of, okay, we experiment. If it doesn't work, we learn something and we move in a different direction. It's just a different way of working in a different mindset that we are all experimenting with. Let's put it like this. And it requires it requires the capability for a manager to hold that space, to create that safety, and to protect experimentation and innovation time for their team. It requires for a manager to think, I really think about it like right now, managers are looking like very narrow into this is my job, this is the work I need to move forward on behalf of the company. And with AI, I think we need to move out and as managers and really look at what is the more systemic way of looking at this end to end with humans and technology in it in order to, move the company goals forward. So managers need to become more systemic in their approach to work. And then the other thing is they themselves need to be role models. So it's about like, not only encouraging your team to use the technology, but using it yourself and speaking about it and creating like a culture of learning. It's I think another thing that Josh Bersin said in the Super Manager that I really liked is like it's moving from, the perspective of as a manager, what job have you done for me, to what have you learned by doing this? So it's really encouraging the learning, and you used reflection earlier, Rajita. So that's another thing is like, how do we create reflection time? So for the managers, so for example, one thing that I'm doing with my team is like regularly we reflect on, okay, we, at the end of the quarter, here's where we are. Let's just reflect. How has this been? What has enabled us to make progress? What got in the way? What can we learn from this? What are we surprised about? So really making time for reflection in order to learn. I don't know if that responds to what you are curious about, Rajita.
It does, and it has also sparked some more questions, Stephanie. I was just thinking that we are talking about like the myths that Vishal was mentioning about a really cold, impersonal environment that introducing AI can create. At least that's the myth. To saying that managers can now focus on promoting a more compassionate work culture and a work culture that encourages you to reflect, think about work differently. And so this is what I gathered from our conversation. The question that came up for me was, what are organizations doing to encourage that shift? Because it has to happen I believe it has to happen at an organizational level. Like you're doing stuff with your team, but is there any directive that you think your organization or other organizations are taking to make that shift deliberate?
It's a very good point. I don't have a clear answer of this is how it needs to happen. I have a few thoughts on what I think we need to look at in this context. So there's the individual manager and what they can do. Then there is the, I think broader, we need to rethink the job description and the job design of a manager, and what is expected of them. And then the next step would be like include that into also the performance management approach to what is rewarded.
Right.
And so that, and on the third element, something that I'm seeing in LinkedIn and also in other companies is like a shift from the performance element to not only looking at the what you've done, but also how you've done it. And the how speaks much more to the culture.
Absolutely.
So that is one enabler. And I'd say we probably need to go even more into that, the how, because the how then also includes like how have you managed technology and enabled the humans, for example. And then there is that needs to be probably like as a starting point, a top down, kind of really a kind of a revival of the culture statements in an organization and the values that an organization stands for. Because if we talk about kind of culture being really important and managers being an amplifier of culture, especially in the context of AI, how do we at company level really live this and sponsor that? And that does need to start at the top. And here, two things that I can share that excite me personally about what we're doing in LinkedIn is we have this year, our executive team has created like an evolved culture statement, a simplified culture statement that is much easier to remember and to live. And that is now in our line of work in the learning space. We are now having one focus area that we're just starting to prioritize, which is culture enablement through learning. And that is another kind of area where I see a shift, that this has always been important, but now there is a stronger emphasis on it. And I think that is something that companies, in my opinion, really need to think about, like what is obviously our strategy for technology and how we use it and how can AI advance our business strategy and our goals. And on the other hand is what is our company culture and how do we create, the human plus element and really enable and empower our employees to engage with each other and live our values and culture in harmony with the technology.
Yeah. Vishal.
Yeah, no, it was just like lots of thoughts again, just coming out of what both of you covered. But I feel like, and again, this is largely based on what I've obviously been hearing in popular media, if I was to kind of say, but I think most organizations seem to have kind of gone down the path of potentially setting some high level expectations around how their organizations should kind of use AI. And then we obviously have cases where it's starting to now kind of get weaved into performance management, going back to the point Stephanie kind of made. I think what's kind of felt a little missing for me, and again, it's maybe just an outsider's perspective in that sense, is I really like the framing you kind of led with, Stephanie, where, you focused on experimentation, you focused on learning, and you focused on connection, right? Those were kind of the three broad areas I was thinking of. But I don't see a lot of organizations actually approaching change management to kind of cover these three aspects. So I kind of almost feel like there is something around, and it's not just the messaging or the comms aspect of it, but it's just reframing how we want to kind of apply this across the organization. That might also kind of help alleviate some of the concerns. And I mean, I haven't come across any great examples of that happening as of yet, and that might be my limited knowledge, but I kind of almost feel like that's probably what's necessary at this stage.
I think, yes, 100%. I wish I could tell you, there's like companies out there that I'm aware of where that change management approach has been really successful. I think it's a challenge. And actually one thing that, we have, we've recently hired a new executive and he kind of overlooks, among other things, our change management approach for LinkedIn. And I really liked he challenged us all to think differently about change management. And he said, actually, it's no longer realistic to manage change because change is just like on steroids. There's so much
Exactly.
change
I was
happening.
just thinking it's so rapid.
Yeah. So
It
kind
is.
of having the notion of being able to manage that is probably no
Manage that.
longer realistic. So he encouraged us to think about change resilience. And we need to build, the capability of change resilience in organizations, which I think, speaks to a lot of the topics that we talked about AI and the anxiety that it creates, potentially. I think it's about kind of how do we help employees to understand, how to survive and thrive. It's not only surviving, it's like, how do I thrive in an environment like that? What is the opportunities for me? What is the role of the manager maybe in enabling that change resilience on their teams? In order, obviously from a business perspective, the ultimate goal is you want to drive business performance. But I think change resilience is so important because we all know if the fight and flight situation happens, employees are just like stagnating and they can't perform as well anymore. So that would be kind of my thinking around it, that it's about how do we create, and this goes probably back to culture. So I'm thinking like out loud here, the change resilience as being like a key enabler lived through the culture of an organization. And you mentioned, I think earlier, Vishal, that it's building trust and psychological safety is the next kind of level up for me. That is really important as well. And from an organizational perspective, it's the importance of being consistent with what you say and what you do. So if our values and culture is being talked about in one way, but the lived experience is different, that creates a gap, and that kind of shears mistrust and lack of safety. But if from a company perspective, if there's cohesion in how we talk about our culture and how we live it and how people experience it, I think that is a key contributor to this change resilience, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a really good I was just going to say good summary of what what is happening at an organization level, but is also being felt by every manager, right? Like, and I feel even before an organization can make those big shifts and guide the company or their managers to move forward, there are things that managers can already do. And I'd love to hear from you. You did mention some, and I know that some of them relate directly to the work that you do in the space of coaching. What, in your opinion, as you're also looking at growing talent, are the skills you're asking managers to build to navigate this change? I think some of the leadership or some of the direction has to come from managers who are facing this at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
It's not always top down.
I think there's like, there's a concept that is, you can summarize it as the 3 E's. You need to empower, enable, and encourage. And that to me is like, as a manager, you need to be less kind of the task control and task management manager of the past, but more your job is to lead with clarity. So provide clarity on like the direction forward so that people know the guardrails or the boundaries. And then within that, empower them to lead, empower them to bring, experimentation, use technology, help enable them to reflect and learn. So there's an element of, and it seems to me like this, Rashida, and you, Vishal, I'm like an executive coach. So I always bring like this mindset of enabling people and helping them to kind of move forward, become better at what they do, and really be true to themselves. I think this is a big part of what managers will need to do going forward. It's like you really become more of a coach to your team, to help them learn, to help them experiment, but to also be an organizational citizen and look at the system. So there's not only a people enablement and technology management, there's also system enablement in this in the tasks for a manager. And that to me is like a key, when I look at managers right now, they're good at managing the task. So I think, the capabilities for then kind of managing their technology, they are there. We just need to help them kind of understand what does that mean in their context. The ability to coach people, in most companies, that is part of how we train managers. The managers coach kind of capabilities. So I think, that's something that we can maybe kind of upskill them on even a bit more, but it should already be there. What I'm seeing as a gap is the systemic thinking. At least, what I'm seeing in our organization is like, that's not necessarily what managers have been asked to do up to this point, to really think like, what is the impact that, that goes beyond my team? How do we work cross-functionally? How do we partner? Because it's no longer the silos that exist in most organizations. I think they will cease to exist, and there's much more fluidity across, and collaboration will become much more important. So that requires them to kind of zoom out and think about the bigger system. So that's kind of just an initial thought of what I think is needed.
I'm a huge fan of systems thinking, so I fully agree.
No,
And
absolutely.
from what you're saying, it's also forcing managers to look beyond their teams and not narrow their purview, right? You're forcing them to look beyond your own team's work and think of the big picture of the organization and where do you fit in, but also how does your action contribute to what happens in the organization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere I also feel like this whole concept of systems thinking has its grounding in the idea of change resilience, because in order to be able to be change resilient or anti-fragile, if you would even take that one step forward, you do need to kind of have that systemic thinking. So yeah, this really resonates.
Yeah.
I guess a follow-up thought to where you kind of started, Stephanie, was we obviously are kind of talking about organizations moving away from task management and leaning more into, I guess, the people side of things at this point. One of the things that Raji and I have spoken about quite a bit in our last couple of episodes is the fact that often the ability to be able to focus on people and move away from tasks is grounded in company culture, right? And it is a spectrum. There are some organizations that are obviously more towards task orientations and others that kind of lean a little more towards the people side, and some in between. So I'm just curious, like, if we are operating with this hypothesis that we want managers to kind of make that shift from task to focus on the human side of things, and the organizational culture doesn't necessarily enable it right off the bat, how do you kind of respond to that in a world where AI is quickly kind of replacing those tasks? I was just wondering if you had any thoughts.
I actually think and this is like an initial reaction to what you're saying, I don't think it's realistic to move away from tasks. I think it's a reframing of it. The focus on tasks is more through technology enablement and managing the technology to do the tasks. So you're still responsible and accountable for managing tasks, because your job as a manager to achieve the business goals is still there. But it's a different lens on it. You're not managing the people who manage the tasks. You're managing the technology who manages the tasks. And then you have the focus that requires more, that is probably more complex, is the human element of it. So how do you then enable the humans to do, to amplify their unique contributions to help us probably do work that we don't even know yet exists? There is this part that is like, actually, if I freed up time with my team
What
here,
more can I do?
what will they be doing? What could we experiment with to learn what the opportunities in the future might be? And there is so it's like you're still responsible for tasks, but in a different way. And then you have an opportunity to shape the future through like experimenting, innovating, seeing what's possible. Again, kind of having in mind the you're here to do a job and kind of to help your company progress. And that then brings me to another thought, which is, and it's a very real, I think, pressure that we as leaders and managers have. If all of a sudden the tasks have been taken, the task is what, the company currently thinks of. This is what we need in order to get to be successful. And we don't know yet exactly what is the other things we don't even know yet that our human employees can do that will bring us into the future. The risk is that this leads to reduction in force. And we're saying, oh, we need less humans. And where, sometimes there might be truth to this because the skill sets are not aligning and so on. Yeah. I think overall that would be a very short-term way of thinking and viewing the world. Yeah. And the job of the manager is, I think, to think about like, what is the new way of working? What might that be? And how do I articulate this to also ensure that I have sufficient coverage, resources to experiment to go into the future? I don't know if that makes sense, but there is a bit of kind of how do I lean also into workforce planning in a way so that we're not kind of with our current way of thinking, reduce the workforce just because we think what we currently do is no longer needed because we don't know yet what we don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the shift from what is tangible to what is unknown, right? Like, in a sense, I'm not saying unknown is, with unknown comes fear, but what is unknown in the sense, what you just said, Stephanie, like we don't even know what else is there that we can actually work on. And if AI takes away what is the tangible part of our work or the busy work, then how am I going to substantiate my existence or validate why I need to be in this company? It reminded me of a time, Stephanie, I don't know if we were working together then when we were trying to launch self-managed teams at Google. And there was this entire conversation that managers or team leads used to have that, okay, so if my role is not to manage the team and the day-to-day tasks and the team does that, what is my role then? Yeah. And to me, I feel that now that has become a more organizational conversation than just in pockets of the organization.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's no longer you're like appointed into the role of the manager and you have like a role-related power because of your kind of place in the hierarchy. It's like, I think, over time, what I'm envisioning, and that's maybe similar to the self-managed teams in a way, but slightly different. I think we'll work much more in squads or like cross-functional teams, whatever you want to call them. And the role of the manager is more like a squad leader who is accountable for maybe the enablement of the humans as well as the management of the technology. And without the authority of direct line management most of the time. So there's also an element to, you asked earlier about the skills. So maybe the skill of influencing in a matrix organization without direct reporting lines and that associated power is probably also one that we need to look at for the manager of the future.
Yeah.
So it is a different role. And it's like, I've always said the role of the manager is like it's a very important role in companies. It is, I think, it is underestimated what it takes to be a really good manager. A lot of the times people are being moved into management position because they're very good subject matter experts in that field. And I think where we are moving is like, we need to have a very clear path to what it takes to become a manager, because it's a very, whether you have subject matter expertise or not, I think it's secondary. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Is a shift from being a resource manager, like, where you manage your resources, to being a people manager where you actually understand people, understand their motivations, everything else. And you're a good facilitator of, this is a very convoluted sentence, but you're a facilitator of mindset shifts, right? You're helping people shift their mindset from thinking of what exists today to what it might look like in the future. And literally, you have to co-create it with your teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, I have three. I've written this down here in preparation. That there's three mindset shifts that I think,
sure.
to your point, that are
Mm-hmm.
really resonating. There's the shift from control to empowerment.
Yeah.
Then there's the shift from execution to innovation.
Yes.
And then there's the shift from top down to bottoms up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think, the last one obviously is always one that is,
Yeah.
it needs to be a bit of both in organizations. But overall, I do think there's an opportunity for us to
Yeah.
be more bottoms up again.
And I also feel like there's opportunity to hold some white space because that's the exploration piece, right?
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. And yeah, I mean, given that we are kind of evolving this role as we're kind of making sense of it on a day-to-day basis, yeah, some space for that.
Oh, and this is actually, I had a conversation about this just the other day in the context of what we are seeing, and it's not unique to LinkedIn. I think I see this everywhere in the industry, is like the manager roles as well as, individual contributors. So it's everyone is maxed out. There's no white space left to do anything, not even learning or reflection.
Yeah.
And that is a real, I'm really concerned about that. And so my point was, I think we need to really redesign our roles to protect a percentage in that role for white space, for learning, for experimentation. Because if we don't do that, I think we risk not innovating at this point in time in history that is so important. We risk burnout. And I also think we risk what you said earlier about one of the myths, that it becomes impersonal,
Yes.
because we really need to protect that humanness, and that requires a bit of white space.
Gosh, I feel
Food for
that this
thought.
conversation is, has answered a lot of the questions, but has also raised so many more thoughts and questions, Stephanie. It's a
Absolutely.
fantastic conversation. As we're coming to a close, I just wanted to ask you, is there something that we didn't ask you? Like, we should have spoken about it or brought it in the context of managers.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we went everywhere.
I know.
And
Yeah.
for me, it's important to say, like, obviously, this is a point in time conversation that this whole topic will evolve further. And thank you for giving me space to share, like, my experience. I'm not claiming to be an expert in it. I'm just telling what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I think to me, the role of the manager is one of the most important roles in organizations going forward. It probably has always been,
Yeah.
but it was under the radar, and I think we need to put it on the radar.
Yeah.
Agree. And you know what that also
Absolutely.
means, right, Stephanie? The fact that it is rapidly changing means you'll also come back as a repeat guest on the podcast.
I'm happy to.
But that,
I know we should do a part 2 with Stephanie on AI and other
Yeah.
things. But Stephanie, to throw one question your way, given that, a bulk of our conversation today was about fears, what is your biggest fear with AI, if any at all?
I think my fear is that we are, as a human race, become complacent and stop thinking critically. That is my biggest fear, because what I'm noticing in myself when using AI, it's so much easier to just give it a task and then just copy and paste and you're done with it. But actually that is not the work. It's like we need to spend a lot of time reviewing what the technology has done and kind of critically sense checking, is that actually correct? And that is my fear, that we over time are losing, and this maybe goes back to the white space, Vishal, that we're losing the will to do this because we just don't have the time anymore. So that to me is like the critical thinking and allowing ourselves the white space to be human is something that I really want to protect.
No, that definitely resonates, and it kind of, I'm sure the two of you have seen this. There have been brain images circulating, at least on the internet with what your left part of the brain looks like when you're using AI versus when you're not.
Oh, I have not seen
Oh,
and
I
the
that.
fa-
haven't seen this.
I,
Okay.
I, sh- I should probably send this as a follow-up, but what it actually points to is brain activity is a lot lesser, obviously, when you're using AI than when you're doing your own critical thinking. So that resonates with what you just said, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And it is a real concern, absolutely.
Yeah. I was just thinking, a fear of mine could be, and connected to what you just said, Stephanie, is that uh, we will end up treating AI as our manager. Like in the sense, we will just blindly follow what it says, whereas we know for a fact that there are inaccuracies and hallucinations that always happen.
Yeah.
And going back to the point where you said critical thinking, or at least a review to say, okay, can I just go through this and make sure it's correct?
Yeah.
So yeah,
You're right. And I actually think conversations like this one are one way of ensuring that doesn't happen.
yeah, yeah,
No, absolutely. And it's a real reminder that, I mean, AI gets better with the context that you provide it, and the context is in your head, not,
Yeah.
I guess, in the AI tools. So I think, when you do blindly trust AI, that's your moment to kind of stop, pause, and think about, hey, what's the context that I'm kind of bringing to the table, or perspectives or experience or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
okay. I think
any other questions, Raji?
yeah, no,
Are we
I was
good?
just going to say we're good. And, what I'm taking away from this conversation is that the future is AI plus human. It's not
Mhm.
or either or. So, that's my takeaway. And I'm also taking, I love the conversation we had around change resilience. It's getting together a concept of resilience that has never been applied to change. Like, we talk of change cycles and all that, and I think even that is that has to shift. In the sense, a change cycle allows for a lot of time to respond. Looks like we will not have that kind of time. So, how do we build change resilience? Is
Yeah.
something that I'm taking away, and I'm going to think about a lot going in the next few days. So, for me, those are my takeaways. Vishal, anything that you want to say to close out?
I think for me, singular thought that kind of frames this entire conversation, and thank you again, Stephanie, is let's enable people and manage technology. I think that was as powerful could get. So really excited to shamelessly use that in conversations going forward and apply it in whatever form or shape.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Steal with pride.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you. This was really
Thank
lovely.
you,
And,
Stephanie. It's an
as
absolute
always,
pleasure.
I've had the pleasure of continuing to talk to you over the last few years, but we need to keep this conversation going, Vishal.
100%.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. That was real fun.
Right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.